What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Sports Authorities. I'm Nathanaelrorie, and that is Jordan Hart. Welcome to episode 5. In today's episode, we have a jam-packed episode for you guys. We'll be recapping the national championship game from Monday night, as well as recapping this past weekend's NFL games, previewing next weekend's NFL games, and a little bit of college basketball rundown. Let's get right into it. All right, so starting out with the national championship game, Alabama pretty much blows out Ohio State in a game that wasn't really much of a game uh, after midway through the second quarter. Um, Nick Saban, he's now won 7 national titles in his last 16 seasons. That is absolutely insane. The rest of the head coaches in college football combined for 6 in that time period.
hmm
Um, this man is just on a level of his own. He is absolutely the GOAT. Um, Alabama just proves that they are undoubtedly the best team in college football for the 2020 season. Um, really wasn't even that close, to be honest. Uh, but there was some takeaways from this game. First one, Mac Jones. Mac Jones impressed me in this game. I've been pretty
hmm
bullish on Mac Jones, to be honest. Didn't think he was that good. Um, mostly a system quarterback. But Mac Jones made some throws in this game that impressed me. I thought Mac Jones really looked good and honestly probably helped his draft stock a little bit. He made some throws that were some tough throws and honestly throws we haven't really seen him make this year. Um, Mac Jones looked good in this game. Um, but honestly, this outcome is still not surprising. Devontae Smith has one heck of a first half, gets hurt at the very beginning of the second half. We don't see him again, which is honestly probably best for his NFL career that we didn't see him in the second half
Yeah.
because, I mean, didn't need to be out there. Alabama absolutely rolled. And, I mean, the dude had 215 receiving yards in the first half. It's just
Right.
ridiculous.
hmm
Devontae Smith, I mean, there's a reason he was the Heisman. Like he just only proved it more in the playoffs that he was the best player in college football this year. Um,
hmm
one other big takeaway I have from this game: Jalen Waddle. He toughs it out, uh, coming back from that fractured ankle. Uh, I'm just gonna be straight. Jalen
Yeah.
Waddle should not have played in this game. Jalen
hmm
Waddle is a guy who's a first round NFL draft pick, has so much potential, a guy who is, who was supposed to be the top star receiver in college football coming into this year before he got hurt. He just didn't need to be out there. Uh, One, the score was it was pretty clear from about midway through the second quarter that Alabama was not going to lose this game. But Jalen Waddle, he listen, you go to Alabama. If you are at Alabama and you're out there hobbling around on one leg and you're winning the game, the next guy up is better than you on one leg, even if you're Jalen Waddle on one leg. Like
hmm
he just did not need to be out there. Um, Someone on that Alabama coaching staff needed to sit him down. It's a little bit of a shame that they didn't.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he will be fully healthy for the combine. But I mean, from a moral standpoint, I love that Jalen Waddle's out there gutting it out. I saw a tweet. I can't remember who it was from, but they said, in a world of college football where we see guys opting out, there's a Jalen Waddle, and
hmm
I think that's awesome. I love that he wants to be out there and play for his team. But man, Ed, it's he should not have been out
Yeah.
there. He did not look healthy. He looked to be in a lot of pain. Um, that those are my takeaways from the national title game. Jordan, what do you got?
Yeah, like you said, Alabama dominant again. Mac Jones looked really good, making plays that I knew he was capable of making. And he just put it all out there on the field for the last game. Devontae Smith, like you said, he had 200 yards in the first half and then was out the rest of the game because he dislocated a finger. And Nick Saban said in the after game press conference that the only reason he didn't come back is because they couldn't get it to pop back in out there on the field. They had to take him back. That's why it took so long.
Mm.
So they made sure nothing was wrong, and that's why he didn't come back. Otherwise, he would have been out there. Apparently, he was fine. And I found it funny because in the after game interview, they asked Devontae. They go, "So can you give us any update about like what happened or what's going on?" He goes, "I'll be fine," and then walks away from the mic. Like I love that. And and Najee Harris, his post game interview is great.
Oh,
It just brings down the fact that this Alabama team was really great all season. It was a fun team to watch. They deserved this game. Ohio State, don't hang your hat on this at all. you had a great season as well. You proved to people that you were a lot better than anyone thought you were after not playing many games at all and then beating Clemson how you did. You just ran into a team that's better all around. This Alabama team is just one of the best teams you will ever see play college football, and you can't do anything about it. And the only other thing I have from this game is, look, this is going to keep happening if we don't make a change because year in, year out, you've got Alabama, Clemson 1 and 2. You have either Oklahoma or Ohio State 3, and then you have a team like Notre Dame that everyone knows is not going to win their game, number 4. Like, it's getting to a point where it's just constant repetition, other than last year with LSU, where we know what's going to happen. We don't have any surprise coming into this, and it's showing because more and more people are getting frustrated on Twitter and on social media about we're tired of watching these national championships where Alabama or Clemson are just rolling whoever gets there, unless it's those two together. If we don't get Alabama and Clemson against each other, it's a very boring championship game because we know the outcome. The team's just better. So I don't know where you go from here, but I think there needs to be a change just because of the sole fact that if we just keep getting this Alabama and Clemson, granted, they just recruit better. That is a fair point. But until Dabo and Saban leave, there's got to be something else to balance out this. Otherwise, you're going to get a constant Alabama or Clemson champion. No one's going to be as entertained to watch it, and I personally am going to get bored with it because I knew the outcome before this game even started. But I don't know. I don't know what you do from here, but it is getting to the point where people are getting bored with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it goes back to what I said a couple of weeks ago about expanding the playoff. And because, you know, I know the people that sit there and say, oh, you expand the playoff, it doesn't matter, those teams are still going to win. Okay, yes, maybe. But what it does is expanding the playoff, it will bring more teams, not necessarily to the level of Alabama and Clemson, but to the level of your Oklahomas, Ohio States, your LSU's, that are fighting for a playoff spot because you know being able as a recruiter, if you're an Iowa State or an A&M or a Florida or anyone who was in that that 5 to 10 range this year, 5 to 12 range, if you're able to to go show your 2021 and 2022 recruits, hey, we made the college football playoff, even though they were the 8 seed, that's way more attractive than not being able to say that. So that will help even the recruiting field because more teams are able to say, hey, we were fighting for a college football playoff. It's just like in basketball when teams are able to say, hey, we made the NCAA tournament 3 years in a row. Like that helps those teams be able to recruit so much more than being like, hey, like we can't make the NCAA tournament because only 4 teams are allowed in. Like that helps even the recruiting field a lot. But I'm not sure when it will happen. I agree with you that it needs to happen. The other thing you touched on, you said Alabama, probably one of the best teams we've seen in college football. I mean, I see people are like, oh, they're not better than last year's LSU, blah blah blah. Maybe not. There's a solid chance that we might have just seen 2 of the best teams ever in college football the last 2 years. Like, and I know this is a goofy conversation because it's like we will never see them play each other. Completely different seasons, different schedules, different resumes, all this stuff. But like we could have very easily just seen 2 of the best teams in college football the last 2 years. And I think that's something we can't take for granted as college football fans. But I think that about does it for the national title game. A pretty boring game for the most part. I think a lot of us kind of saw it coming. But to this weekend's NFL slate, or this past weekend's rather NFL slate, the wild card weekend was not too wild, to be honest. Our first game on Saturday afternoon, you had the Bills and the Colts. This was a little bit of a closer game the whole way through than I think a lot of us probably expected it to be. I thought the Bills' offense just kind of looked a little pedestrian, or maybe a little bit of a lack of intensity from the Bills. Not saying they're looking ahead or anything, but it just wasn't necessarily what I would expect them to come out looking like after they just boat raced the Dolphins in Week 17. A little bit different intensity this week, which surprised me a little bit. The Colts hung with the Bills. I said they could. Look, is this the end of Philip Rivers' career? I'm not sure. I think he's still got a year or two left in the tank. I mean, he got the Colts to the playoffs, and I mean they looked decent at times throughout the
Yeah.
year. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. But I do think Philip Rivers has a couple years left in the tank. Listen, I know if you're a Colts fan, you're gonna hate me bringing this up, but man, Frank Reich, you can absolutely cannot punt in that situation. Just a terrible decision to
Yeah.
punt. You're on the road at Buffalo. You're the 7 seed versus the 2 seed. Like you're playing with house money here, and you decide to punt. You just can't do that. And they still had a chance to drive down the field and get a field goal at the end of the game.
Yep.
So if you're a Colts fan, I'm sure your takeaway from this game is that man, we could have beaten the Bills, and you absolutely could have. If you're a
Yeah.
Bills fan, listen, it's the playoffs. Survive in advance. I wouldn't put too much weight into barely beating the Colts. Um, look, you'd obviously like to win by more, but in the playoffs, a win is, I mean, any given
Wins a
Sunday in the
win.
NFL, a win is a win, especially in the playoffs. You take it, you move on, and you prepare for next week. Jordan, what thoughts you got here?
Yeah, like you said, the Bills, they barely pulled it out, but it was still a good game. I watched some of it. It was their first win in a playoff game for a quarter century now, so that's hats off to you
Yes.
guys there. I still 100% wholeheartedly believe they can beat anybody in this playoff. This could change this week when they play the Ravens, but we'll get more into that later. And it just kind of depends on how they come out and if they impress me or not again this week. Colts tough loss. They thought they could have come out and won this game and probably more in this playoff. If I'm being honest, I think they're probably the best. They were a low seed, but they still had a very good chance of pulling some miracle off in this playoff. They weren't they were a strong team this whole season. They looked pretty good for most of the season, other than both times they played Jacksonville, which we ignore. Um, but I find it interesting because I pay attention a lot to the interviews after games, and one of them was with Frank Reich, and they asked him, they're like, what's your QB? Who's your QB next year? And he put it out there. He goes, I want Philip Rivers as my quarterback next year. I
Mm-hmm.
love him, and I found that amazing because if I'm the Colts and I'm looking ahead, I'm going, this team has some young pieces put together already on it. Put Jacob Eason in next year. Let him get some. Let him get a year. You guys, you can take a year off to get him going. He could be really good. He's got an arm on him. He can play this game. Let him get comfortable in the league, and you guys might have something growing there in Indy. But for some reason, he's got some other ideas. And Philip Rivers, I loved his answer to this when he asked what's his plan for next year. He goes, I'll play wherever I'm needed. If I'm not needed, I'll be in Alabama coaching a football team if you need me. So, it comes down to there's going to be some interesting conversation with the Colts this offseason. We'll get more into that later on when it comes to time. But I think that's about it with that game. The next game of the day was the Rams and Seahawks. Was not very impressed with this game other than the fact that the Rams won it and not the Seahawks.
Yeah.
I saw some amazing grit from Jared Goff. Granted, he could not throw the ball very well at all. It looked horrible coming out of his hand with that thumb. But he still led this team to a win. That defense really helped him get there. It's sad to see Wolford come in to start and then get hit in the neck like that. But from what I heard is he was perfectly fine. It just stunned him, and he didn't know how to react.
That was a brutal hit.
It was, but to be fair, I like Jared Goff coming out with that grit and getting that game still with that thumb. I'm interested to see how that goes next week when they play. Seahawks confused me with their game plan. They were it looked like at most times they were scared to throw the ball, and you saw it in game. DJ Metcalf was yelling on the sideline at his coaches and players, "Give me the ball," because they weren't throwing it. They kept handing it off, which granted, I get it. You want to run game, you want to balance it out, but there was no balancing it. Metcalf hadn't gotten thrown for most of the first half, and the one time he did, he scored. So I think if you're in Seattle, you got to watch it because if I'm DJ Metcalf, if I'm not getting that ball, I'm looking to get out of there as soon as possible because I'm one of the top wide receivers in the nation right now, if I'm being honest. And the way it looks, Russell Wilson, he hasn't been good as of late. He did not impress me once again in this game. I saw a picture he posted on Twitter. He said, year 10 down, more to come. And he looked fat as crap on there. So, I don't like judging him based off of that. But, man's getting a little bit old and he's not looking that good on the field. So if I'm DJ Metcalf, I'm looking at it as I need to pay attention in this next year and see how this goes because I might be out the door, and Seattle's got to figure this out because if they lose him, they're gonna have some problems and they're gonna have to rework their whole thing, their whole program, including the coaching staff. That whole program needs to switch it around if he leaves because they need to build around him. That's gonna be their key player from here on out. But I don't know. I'm not impressed with the Rams, though, even though they did win this game. The only thing I'm impressed with is that defense. If they come back out, this could be a different story next week, but we'll talk about that more in here in a minute. Nathanael, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Jared Goff, ton of grit. I mean, that to cut. I mean, clearly he's not 100%. I mean that he showed a lot of grit coming out there, willing his team to a victory. Listen, I think when talking about Russell Wilson, I think maybe a little bit of an overreaction there, but the Seahawks did fire their offensive coordinator yesterday, and I think that's the right move. You look at it, it's so weird because the first 8 weeks of the season or so, all you saw on Twitter was let Russ cook, Russell Wilson MVP, he's having a great year and all this stuff, and then the second half of the season he just dwindled away, and yes, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's not Russell Wilson's fault. That it's not all the offense corner. Yeah, Russell did not look great the last half of the season, but defenses seemingly really had the Seahawks offense figured out the second half of the year, and I think it's just it boils down to that the offense didn't make adjustments in the second half of the season when defenses seemingly had them figured out or knew how to defend them. The offense just didn't make adjustments scheme wise, personnel wise. They just kept rolling with the same thing, and there's a reason they started losing games, and then why they lost again in the playoffs is they didn't change, they didn't adapt, they didn't work to make the offense better. They kind of just expected it to just the results to magically come back to what they were at the beginning of the season, and that was the problem. And that's what led to Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator, getting fired is because they didn't make adjustments. And in a league like the NFL, you have to make adjustments. Like defenses are going to watch film. They're going to someone's going to figure you out unless you're the Chiefs. And you have to adjust. Like you just have to. You can't sit there and expect things to just all of a sudden start working again. So it's surprising that the Seahawks didn't make adjustments. I think firing Schottenheimer was the right move. Listen, I still think Russell Wilson's a good football player. I think he will bounce back if they get the right offensive coordinator in there with the right scheme. But I do think Russell Wilson is a quarterback, and with his play style, where they do need a good running game to pair with that. And I'm not sure Chris Carson is necessarily bringing that. He's had some injury issues throughout the last couple of years. So I think it's interesting to see where Seattle goes from here, what type of moves they make in the draft and the offseason to see how they can, build themselves back into NFC contenders because that's not where they're at right now. But our last game on Saturday was Tampa Bay. They survived in Washington. Really not much to take away from this game. Tampa Bay's on the road. I know they only won by one possession, but they're on the road. It's a playoff game. Washington's shown to be scrappy and play good teams very closely. Really, my only main takeaway from this game is Taylor Heineke balled out. I mean, that dude took his opportunity and ran with it. So good for him. Still probably not going to be a starting quarterback next year, but okay. It's fine. Good for that guy. He took advantage. Maybe he gets in, a conversation for a battle somewhere. We'll see what happens with him. But Washington puts up a good fight. Listen, that's a young team. They have a lot of potential, especially on the defensive side of the ball, led by Chase Young over there. That team has some potential in the next couple of years coming forward. They just got to get some things figured out. But Tampa Bay survives. They win on the road. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've got any more thoughts, but
I think there's only one other thing in that I think Taylor Heineke should take the starting spot from Alex Smith next year. I was very impressed with him this game. I'm tired of him getting no respect. Let's put him as a starting quarterback next year for the Washington football team because obviously Dwayne Haskins was not the answer. So let's move on to Sunday's game with the Ravens and Titans. First one off. The Ravens first surprise to us, they pulled this one out. They got down early, 10-0 in the first quarter, and Lamar Jackson did what we said he wouldn't. He came back. I think the biggest thing, there's only one thing that this is the only way this outcome happens. Derrick Henry stats: 18 rushing attempts, 40 yards. I don't know if it was because they didn't get the right play call off or if the Ravens defense was just that good, but when he's only having 40 yards in a game, I would be surprised if anyone in this league were to lose to them, because that's the Titans' only thing right now. They don't got much going after that, clearly, as they did lose this game. Lamar Jackson impressed me, though. I'm impressed as he did go and get his first playoff win. I'm excited to see if he can come back this week and play to his skill again. But if I'm the Titans, the fact that Derrick Henry only had 40 yards and that was the fault to your game, I'd be looking into seeing what's wrong there, because if I'm the Titans, I don't lose that game. You're expected to win that game. You're at home. You beat them last year. You're expected to win that game, and then if you lose your one player, that shouldn't be the end of it. You should have a team of players to back that up and still be able to compete. Granted, they only lost by a touchdown, but I think there's some things to think about in Tennessee with that. But if I'm the Ravens, you celebrate that win, you celebrate Lamar getting his first one, and you get ready for next week because you got a hell of a game next week. But other than that, that's all I got for that game.
Yeah, I mean, I think this game was interesting to me. This game was really a defensive heavy game, which I wasn't really expecting coming in, because neither teams have fantastic defenses. I was actually really impressed that the Ravens were able to stop Derrick Henry like that, and I do think that's why they were able to come back, because you look at the box score. It's not like Lamar Jackson got down, he started putting up big passing numbers. Like I said, they were able to come back because they did stick to the rushing game, and which is a surprise because that's not what John Harbaugh has done in the past with this team. He has not wanted to stick with the rushing game. He's always wanted to start going pass heavy. So maybe that's an indicator that John Harbaugh has changed his mentality when they get down. But also, they just kept stopping Derrick Henry. It wasn't like they were down and they were still being threatened to where it was like, we have to score or we're going to be out of this game. Because in the second quarter, the Titans offense just kind of came to a slow, and there was just nothing going for them on that side of the ball. So I think that that helped the Ravens be able to stick to their rushing game and be able to come back in this one. But yeah, just an odd game, pretty boring. Can't believe Mike Vrabel punted from the Ravens 39. I mean, like, this is the same guy who said he will cut off a piece of his body that I will not name to win a Super Bowl, and yet he won't punt from the Raven, or he won't go for it on fourth down from the Ravens 39. Just once again, I mean, a terrible. This is the second of three terrible punting decisions that I'm going to bring up today, and it's not justified. Like, there's nothing that justifies punting in that situation. Like, you absolutely have to go for it. It makes no sense to me. They still had the ball with a chance to drive down and score at the end of the game. Tannehill throws a pick. Just not a very pleasing game in general to watch. I don't, I think the Ravens pose an interesting matchup in Buffalo. But I just really don't know what to take away from this game and don't know what to make of it. It's just an odd game from both sides. The middle of the day game on Sunday, another pretty boring one. The Saints rout the Bears.
What do you
in
mean
a boring
boring?
game. Honestly, I have one takeaway from this game. Mitchell Trubisky, the MVP. Fantastic. I did not watch this game. I was driving to Nashville, where I am currently back at school. I heard people like the Nickelodeon broadcast, so I guess that's a good thing. I think it's absolutely hilarious that Trubisky was voted the MVP. Other than that, I have no takeaways from this game. The Saints cruised as expected.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of this Nickelodeon thing. I don't know who thought of this, but I did not like it. I don't know if you saw, but apparently the DB got punched again for the Saints. So that was an interesting thing to happen. Yeah, that was the second one that I thought it. I was told it, and I thought they were talking about the last game, but it actually happened again. They didn't show it on the Nickelodeon one for
Huh.
reasons, obviously. Um, the Saints, they weren't impressive on the scoring side, but at the same time, they did get 3 touchdowns, and the defense did hold the Bears to 9 points. Now, that's not saying much because it is the Bears. Once again, I'm gonna state this: Bears are bad. They need to do some off-season work because that defense is a lot better than they're playing, and then the offense is just not doing anything to help it. So
Yeah.
there needs to be some off-season work, but like I keep saying, we'll get more into that off-season stuff later. Congrats, Trubisky. The only award you're ever gonna get as a Bear. You're not getting anything else. I'm sorry. Other than that, like I said, Slime Bowl is stupid. I don't like it. Sure, if you want to, but I'm not trying to appeal to 10-year-olds for a game where men are hitting each other. So, but other than that, I don't take anything else away from this game. It's pretty boring. You weren't missing much.
I mean,
but
if Nickelodeon's your thing, then I mean, sure. I probably would not have watched the game on Nickelodeon for very long. I don't think there's really anything else to take away from that game. The last game of Wildcard Weekend, and practically, or not practically, but the game that had the most things to talk about. The Browns absolutely boat raced the Steelers in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
I mean, what a game! Where do you start here? I mean, Pittsburgh just made mistake after mistake after mistake. Seemingly nothing went right for them in the first half. It all started with the snap and was all downhill from there. Yet in the second half, they seemingly had a chance to come back and win this game. They had all the momentum. They're rolling, and there they are, down 15 points. And Mike Tomlin says, "Nah, we'll punt the football." Once again, what are you doing? You were down 15 points toward the end of the third quarter in a game at which you were down 28, and you're like, "Nah, we'll punt the football." And then you doubled down on your decision in your post-game press conference because you wanted to win the field position battle. Mike Tomlin, you are probably a Hall of Fame coach, but you punted in a game you were down 15 to win the field position battle. And you know what the Browns did? They said thanks for the ball, and they went down and scored a touchdown.
Yeah.
And that was the dagger. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? That decision just makes no sense. If I was a Steelers fan, I would be absolutely irate. It makes me mad just watching the game. Now I'm not even a fan of the Steelers. I'm like, I just don't understand the decision. As a Chiefs fan, it makes me so happy that I have Andy Reid as my head coach because I know Andy Reid ain't punting that decision or in that situation. I don't understand that decision at all. It makes no sense. The Steelers, I'm just going to say it, they were incredibly overrated at 11-0. They hadn't really beaten anyone of substance, and all the Steelers fans that defended them, their team, trying to say that they had beaten good teams. You hadn't, and your team only proved that in the last 7 weeks, or in the regular season and then in the postseason by losing several times and getting blown out by the Browns. Your team was not as good as you thought it was, and that's fine, but just realize that your team is not as good as you thought it was. Maybe before you go to bat for your 11-0 team that's beaten a cupcake schedule. But listen, my main takeaway from the Browns in this game, their running game is legit. If you didn't already know, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are absolutely the best 1-2 running back duo in the league. We'll see they're dealing with some offensive line depth, so we'll see if that affects them next week. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. But the Browns' run game is legit. Those two are two absolute studs together in the backfield. The Browns do have problems on defense. Big Ben, he throws several turnovers, and that's honestly what prevents the Steelers from being able to come back in this game because he still threw for over 500 yards. I mean, if you're the Browns and we'll talk about this more in a minute, but if you're the Browns, you give up 500 yards to Patrick Mahomes next week, you are losing by at least 4 touchdowns. So you probably should not do that next week. If you're the Browns, you got to figure out some things on the defense side of the ball. But listen, you made the playoffs for the first time in 18 years or whatever it was. You got your playoff game. It was against the team who has done nothing but essentially dunk on you for the last 2 decades. If you're a Browns fan, you got to take this win and be extremely happy with it. Your team went out and rolled. It'll be interesting to see what Pittsburgh goes with Big Ben from here. We had the same conversation last year.
Yeah.
Listen, I know Ben threw a lot of picks, but like let's be honest, every team or every quarterback has those games. I mean, obviously
Mm-hmm.
you can't have it in the playoffs, and you can't defend that. But he still threw for over 500 yards. I think Ben still has another year left in him. It'll be interesting to see where the Steelers go uh, if they they try and trade for someone, if they
Yeah.
draft a quarterback, test out Mason Rudolph. It'll be interesting. We'll talk about that more uh, in the off season. But a lot of interesting storylines from this game. Jordan, what you got to add?
Yeah, I want to just once again applaud the team that's never been to the playoff very often. They got their first playoff win since 1995. I love bringing up those kind of stats. So, congrats, you guys deserved it. I did say on our preview episode that Ohio was going to struggle this weekend, and they did partially. Not in this game. I'll give you guys that. The Browns looked very good. Now, granted, it was against a mediocre Steelers team that did get overhyped, but I do think the Steelers did show that they were still better than what people were giving them credit for. With them coming back, they were down 28 to nothing, and Bleacher Report decided to tweet it out saying that the Browns are on track to win 112 to nothing, like that was actually going to happen. Don't know why anyone would ever think to tweet that, but you know what? It's whatever. It's Bleacher Report. We listen to them. Do I think they have enough to take on the Chiefs? We'll get back into that later. That's an interesting question to think about, though. I think one of the heartbreaking things from this was watching some of the end game stuff or after the game stuff. Ben was on the bleacher crying as Maurice Pouncey. I think that's his name. I might be wrong.
Marquise.
Marquise. I always throw him away.
There's two of them.
But it was heartbreaking because he came over to the bench and he told him, "I was only doing this for you. You were the only reason I was doing this." So it sucks to see that. I fully expect Ben Roethlisberger to be back, though. I don't think he's done. The only other thing really is Juju. Stop with the TikTok. You're done. Corvette, out of here. You need to be done with it. You're going to get your team and you killed because your team's going to kill you after doing that. You don't do that, especially after getting laid out by the Bengals and then your team saying the Browns are the Browns. Mm-hmm. You lost to them again when your starters are back. So this Steelers team, they got a lot to work with because they also like to talk a lot. Like Chase Claypool, he's on Instagram Live going, "The Browns are the Browns. They're losing to the Chiefs next week." You just lost to them. You were down 28-0 at the first quarter. Why are you talking? Have some respect for the team that beat you, scored 48 on you, and move on. Your season's done. Watch from the bench and watch from your home. Do whatever. I'm tired of guys being like that because there's no point in being cocky when you just lost again.
The whole notion that there's no such thing as bulletin board material when you get to the pros is just wrong. Like coaches come out and say, "Oh, we don't care about that stuff. We don't look into whatever." But which coaches might not. But you tell me the players don't see that stuff and they don't take and use that as motivation. That's absolutely wrong. And let's say even if they didn't, why even give them the opportunity to? Like,
right.
It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand why guys continue to do it.
Me either. But let's go ahead and let's go into the preview for this week's divisional round. First game, I went ahead and got the schedule pulled up again in order so we can do it again. Rams versus Packers is our first game on Saturday afternoon. Can Goff do it again? He did not look well throwing that ball, but he probably is going to be the quarterback, I'm assuming. I haven't heard anything
I
out
would
of LA,
assume.
But I'm assuming he's going to be. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do anything. Two headlines coming out of Green Bay. One, Jared Veldier, the offensive tackle who just started for the Colts against the Bills last week, will be suiting up for the Packers this week. If you didn't hear, he was on the practice squad for the Colts all season, and for the last two games, he got moved up to starting because they needed people. So it's really interesting to see. He is going to be the first player to play in two playoff games with different teams in one season. I don't know if he's going to be exactly a factor for them, but I don't really know the Packers situation there, so I can't really talk much about that. That's interesting to see.
Yeah.
Other thing was Devontae Adams raising some concerns because he sat out of practices last week. They weren't injury related, so I don't really know why he sat out. Didn't really say, but he says he feels great and ready to go. So I don't think it's a big problem because he is a very good wide receiver, and if he's playing like it doesn't matter what he did last week. He's gonna be really good for them. The only way I see the Rams pulling this off, though, that defense has to hold the Packers to 2 touchdowns or less, which they're not going to do. But if they want to win this game, they have to do that because Jared Goff is not going for more than 3 touchdowns, and they don't have enough rushers to get 3 touchdowns on their own either because that rushing core is not very good. So,
Yeah.
all in all, I'm not very intrigued by this game. I think the Packers take it easily up there in Lambeau. So I'm taking the Packers by 10.
Yeah, I think. Listen, like you said about Jared Goff, I think he will be the quarterback. It'll be interesting to see how he's feeling. How that thumb holds up. If he's not 100%, going in the cold up there in Lambeau, getting hit, it's gonna be just brutal for him. That's gonna be so tough for this Rams team. It's tough for anyone to go into Lambeau and win this time of year.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna be really tough for this Rams team. They're going to have a big day from their running game with Cam Akers. He had a pretty big day against Seattle. We'll see if he can replicate it. I don't suspect that he will be able to. Green Bay is just a very well-rounded team on both sides of the ball. I think Green Bay probably cruises here. They're 6.5-point favorites. I would take them to cover the spread. I think
100%.
Green Bay probably wins this game. I just think there's just too many things for the Rams to have to overcome. Being in Lambeau, the cold, Jared Goff not being 100%. I just think that those are some things that are gonna hinder the Rams. And it stinks because I think if Jared Goff is completely healthy in this game, I think this Rams team is actually pretty good. I think they could put up a good fight, but I just don't imagine he's probably gonna be 100%. And in the cold, I mean that's just gonna be brutal on that thumb of his. I think the Packers win and cover the spread at home. Our other game on Saturday in prime time, the Baltimore Ravens travel to Buffalo. This game became so intriguing after this past weekend's slates. Listen, I don't think Baltimore's offense can hang with Buffalo's offense. But I say this, and these two teams scored within 4 points of each other, in their wild card games. But you look back at the regular season. Buffalo finished the season on an absolute offensive tear, just hanging 40 on people, and Baltimore wasn't doing that. But both teams don't hang exactly a ton of points in the wild card weekend, which is interesting. But listen, if the Bills come out hot, it's going to be tough for Baltimore. They're at Buffalo. It will be cold. And it's just I think if the Bills come out hot, I don't think it'll be. It's not going to be as easy for them to come back against the Bills as it was the Titans. I think that's for sure. I think very different. The Bills' offense is just so much better. It's not based on running the football. It's based on throwing the football with Josh Allen, and I think that just poses a ton of problems for Baltimore's defense. It's just such an odd matchup to me. I think so many different things can happen in this game. But honestly, I do think the Bills win, and I think they cover the 2.5-point spread. It's just I just don't really see the Ravens being able to go into Baltimore and being able to hang with the Bills. But at the same time, if the Bills come out and they're not hot on offense and they're looking a little shaky again, it's an interesting ball game. The defenses are neither defense once again is great, so it's just a very intriguing game. And one that I would expect to be pretty close, if not maybe the closest game all weekend.
Yep, this is a very interesting game. As I agree with that. I think it's gonna be one of the major factors will be that Josh Allen and the Bills are gonna have the Bills Mafia behind them again. That is a big factor. I know it's not you can say whatever you want. This season had no fans, and now we're in the playoffs, and the Bills Mafia is back in their home games. I think it's going to prove to be a difference if it's a close game again, like it was against the Colts last week. Like you said though, Lamar Jackson did look good. He looked pretty good last week, and both teams are looking all right going into their next game. I think this has the potential to be a shootout. I think if both teams are hot, they can both go in there and put up the points like you said. But I think they could both put up points. But at the same time, they're wild card games. They didn't prove that they could do it. So I think this could go many ways, like you said. It could either be a shootout, it could be a defensive standstill, and who can score the most field goals, or it could just be a blowout by one team. I don't really know what one it's going to be. I think it's most likely going to be one of the closer ones, and I think I'm going with the Bills here. I think they're going to cover. I think they get it by a touchdown. I don't think it's. I find it hard to see Baltimore going up there to Buffalo and winning that game. I really do, especially because it's probably going to be cold up there too, and with the Bills Mafia behind them, it's really tough to see them winning this game. But other than that, I think we move on to the Sunday games. First one, I see this as your highlight game of the week for any sport.
Absolutely.
It's the Browns versus the Chiefs in Kansas City. The Chiefs are back to playing again this week after they took their break because they're the best team. They get the Browns this week. I'm very intrigued in this game. I like it going into this week. The Browns did just score 48. Do I think they're going to score 48 again? No. The Chiefs' defense is a lot better than the Steelers. Do I think they could come out with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder and punch the Chiefs in the mouth right off the bat? I could see that happening. If I'm a Kansas City fan, Nathanael, you can listen to this too if you really want to, but I think you can almost agree and understand this already. The Browns have all the potential to come out in this game and be up 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. And I fully think that could happen. Does that mean they're going to win? No. The Chiefs will come back. It's in Kansas City. You're going to have fans. As far as I know, I'm like 99% sure almost every game's having fans. So, yes, the Cleveland could come out, punch you in the mouth first quarter. It's just like when the Texans came out and were up, 28-0 or 28-7 on you guys a couple years ago?
24-0 last year, yep.
24-0. Patrick Mahomes, he's going to come back. It doesn't matter if you guys are down 14-0 at the end of the first quarter or the first half. Patrick Mahomes is going to come out there. He's going to start throwing it to all of his people, handing it off, doing whatever he needs to do to get this game. Chiefs end up coming back, taking this game by a storm. I'm taking Chiefs by 2 touchdowns. Browns, love you guys this year. You're playing really well. Your miracle season's coming down to the end here. You're not going into Kansas City and win this game. I understand Kareem Hunt's coming back, and he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, but you can't do it. There's no way you walk in there, Cleveland, and beat the Chiefs. Now, I said this last week against the Steelers, and you proved me wrong. So feel free to go ahead and prove me wrong, because I'd love to see my co-host here get a little bit angry. But
that's not nice.
I just joke with you. It's okay. You'll be fine. But I full-heartedly believe Chiefs win this by 2 touchdowns, and I already know where you're going with this, so feel free to go on your little rant about the Chiefs.
I mean, yeah, you know where I'm going with this, but listen, the Browns had a great win last week, but this is the end for the Browns. And, it's interesting what you said about the Browns, being up 14-0. And I agree. The Browns could come out and be up 14-0 early and you'd be like, but it's right. It's so weird being a Chiefs fan because, we've been through, before Patrick Mahomes, all these, a terrible playoff history. If you don't know about the Chiefs' terrible playoff history, look it up because I could do a whole podcast episode on the pain of being the Chiefs fan before Patrick Mahomes, and even the first year, thanks Steve Ford. There's just the Browns have the potential to make this a shootout. They do. But the Chiefs have playmakers on the defensive side that I think separate their defense from the Browns defense. And I'm not saying the Chiefs defense is good because I know firsthand being Chiefs fans, our defense is not great or stellar by any means. But we do have Tyrann Mathieu, Chris Jones. Those guys will make some plays that I think if this game is a shootout will be the difference. But I just don't think it gets to that point. I think the defense steps up a little earlier in the game. And listen, it's like I said earlier, the Browns let Big Ben threw picks, and the Steelers turned the ball over 5 times, which was the difference in that game. First of all, the Chiefs aren't going to turn the ball over 5 times. I hate to break it to you. The most we've turned the ball over in a game this year was, I believe, 4. I think we threw 3 picks and we had a fumble against the Dolphins, and we still won that game on the road. So,
and that's one of the better defenses.
And the Dolphins have a good defense. You're absolutely right. So, if Patrick Mahomes throws for 500 yards, the Chiefs absolutely boat race the Browns and win this game by at least 4 touchdowns. and that's just how it is. You can't. The Browns defense is going to have to step up. I know they're getting Denzel Ward back, but listen, Denzel Ward can't guard Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hate to break it to you, but he can't. And if you think Sendejo is going to lock down Travis Kelce, please go watch Travis Kelce film because that man is going to have an absolute day. I mean,
Yeah.
it's playoff time. The Chiefs have been waiting for this game since September. It's you're going to see Andy Reid come out just guns a blazing. I think the Chiefs. I'm not going to say we're going to cover the spread because it's a 10-point spread, and if you look at our us down the stretch this year, we weren't covering the spread because we were getting up and then we were letting
Mm-hmm.
off the gas pedal. So I'm not going to say we're going to cover the spread, but I think the Chiefs win this game. I know it's a shocker, but I just me sitting here as a Chiefs fan, I think the Browns can make this game close. I think they can make it interesting, but I don't think we can lose to the Browns. I just think the Chiefs are just too good. And even if we get down, I saw on Good Morning Football. I believe it was Peter Schrager was asked, how many points, do the Chiefs have to be down at halftime for you for a Browns fan to feel comfortable that they have the game in the bag, and the consensus answer was 42 points. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're telling me that for a team to be comfortable at halftime, they have to be up 6 touchdowns, I'm feeling pretty good that the Chiefs are going to pull
Yeah.
this game out. Um, Moving on to the last game of the weekend, the Buccaneers at the Saints. And man, this game is a toss-up. It's two legendary Hall of Fame quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Drew
Yep.
Brees. Um, Listen, I think the Saints are the better team in this game, but it is so ridiculously hard to beat the same team 3 times in the same year.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the Saints have to do this week is beat the same team 3 times in the same year, and not just the same team. You have to beat Tom Brady for the same time in 3 years,
Yeah.
and Tom Brady in the playoffs. I think that is ridiculously hard for the Saints, and I honestly don't know who to pick in this game. Because I'm sitting here and my gut's telling me the Saints are the better team, but my head's telling me no one beats Tom Brady 3 times in the same
Yeah.
year. And the Saints, the last several years in the playoffs, have just had games to make you sit there and scratch your head thinking, how did they lose this game? Um,
True.
I, I want to say the Buccaneers win this game. I'm not betting against Tom Brady in the playoffs, and I'm not betting against him losing 3 times. So I want to say the
Yeah.
Buccaneers win this game, but I'm really not sure where to go. What do you got?
Um, I've got a couple things. So first of all, I don't remember who tweeted this, but I loved this tweet because it was a cover art for Sunday Night Football. It was Tom Brady and Drew Brees, both with major facial hair, and says premiering on History Channel. Love that. This could be a game that it could be a classic that we're replaying for years to come. It could be the last matchup between the two. We don't know what either of these guys are doing next year. So we need to watch this as one of the best games, like one of the last times we're ever going to see them. Um, to be honest, the Bucks weren't too convincing against the Washington football team. But then again, the Saints only scored 21 on the Bears, and the Bucks scored more. So I agree with you. This is a very big toss-up. You never bet against Tom Brady in the playoffs, and the Saints have been known to lose in the divisional round, but this isn't the Vikings. So I don't know what to expect in this game. I wrote down Saints by 3. I don't want to say that right now. That was
Mm-hmm.
just me throwing something out there, but honestly, it's one of those ones where if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, but eventually I probably will be. So if I'm a betting man on this game, I'm flipping a coin and saying whichever one it is because I don't know who you take in this game. It's another divisional matchup who've played twice now. Granted, the Saints have won both times, but it's the playoffs and it's Tom Brady, so you've established it. This game's a toss-up. I guess I'll go with the Saints just so that way you guys can have an opinion from me. But if it is, it's by a field goal, and I'm not even confident in that. So,
Yeah.
with
I
that
think,
being
like you
said,
said,
yeah.
it's a bad game to bet on. I think the only bet here is probably the under. I think the
Mm-hmm.
over/under set at 52. I know that's a low, but I don't expect this game to be very high scoring. Both teams have pretty
No.
solid defenses, and
Mm-hmm.
these two teams, when playing each other, haven't historically had uh, barn burners, especially this year. So
Yeah.
I will go. Um, I would take the under, but I would stay away from the spread. But with that being said, let's move on to our last segment of today's episode. A quick
Yep.
rundown of college basketball. Um, at this point, when we're recording, it's been about a week and a half since we last talked about college basketball. So of course that leaves way too many games for us to possibly recap. So just some quick rundowns of some storylines for you guys. Rutgers has taken back-to-back blowouts to Michigan State and Ohio State. That's tough for them, but hey,
Tough.
welcome to the Big 12. Am I right? Or not the Big 12, sorry, the Big 10.
Big Ten.
Welcome to the
Yeah.
Big 10 this year. You're going to struggle. It's going to be tough. No game is easy, even for teams like Rutgers. That's just tough.
Yep.
Texas, they are legit. They beat West Virginia. They are absolutely deserving of their ranking where they are right now. Man, that team is good. Honestly, they should probably be number 3 ahead of Villanova. They've beaten more ranked teams. They have a way better resume. Not really sure why they're behind Villanova. I think Texas is better. And my last storyline from last week and a half is the Michigan Wolverines are also very legit. There's a reason they are number 7 at 10-0. They're 6-0 in the Big Ten, which is just insane. No one has gone undefeated in the Big Ten except for them. Not even the Hawkeyes over there, Iowa. And they just absolutely blew out Wisconsin last night. Just absolutely dominated Wisconsin, who is the number 9 team in the country. It wasn't even close. Man, Michigan is legit. They're good. There's no more questions about the Wolverines. What other storylines do you have from this past week and a half?
I only get a couple. First of all, I do want to cover Michigan again. This team is crazy good. They beat the Badgers 77-54. This is their 3rd time beating a top 25 team by 15 points or more this season. That's a crazy stat to think about. So now they're 11-0, 6-0 in the Big Ten. I think it's safe to say they're the best team in the Big Ten. We had some doubts about them because they hadn't really played anybody. We're now a couple weeks later. They've beaten 3 teams that are ranked by over 15 points. I think it's safe to say that at this point. Hawkeyes could give you a good argument, but we haven't seen them play, so we don't really know yet.
The unfortunate thing is we don't get Michigan versus Iowa until March 4th. That is an absolute travesty. In a Big Ten where it seems like we get ranked versus ranked matchups every night, the fact that we don't get Michigan and versus Iowa for almost 2 more months is that is very very unfortunate.
Yeah, but I wanted to stick with the Tuesday games because this Tuesday slate yesterday, when we're recording this on Wednesday, this was a big slate that we're not really, we don't have the big, highlights about, but it had a lot of good games that could have been played and a lot of games that were. If you guys didn't know, Kansas, number 6, did lose again. They lost to Oklahoma State by 5. I loved the ending to this, by the way. I saw you tweet about this.
Oh yeah.
This dunk for the whatever you want to say, I love it. I love guys who will go out, they know they're up, they don't care. They're going to go and do some flashy move at the end of the game to put the stamp on the game. I love it. Put it in their face. You just beat Kansas. Who cares?
I absolutely love it. Disrespect Kansas every time you get the opportunity. Every time you get the opportunity, disrespect Kansas. MIZ, baby. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Didn't the little one school, what was it, Monmouth last year do it at Kansas? Even though they were down by 20,
when they were getting
stole the ball. And that,
also,
I love that.
No one gets more salty about that than Bill Self, so absolutely do it. Every time you have the chance to dunk against Kansas, please dunk.
Do it. It's the best thing ever. I love it. Keep doing it. Other games, the only other game that was a big one last night was Virginia Tech Duke. I was surprised to see the Hokies win this. I know they were at home and they were only 1 rank behind, but I've always been a big, Duke guy. Duke's probably the best in the ACC every year, and now they're 5-3. So that's an interesting thing to look at. The ACC's showing to have 4 teams ranked now, so that's impressive, I guess, or maybe even 5. I don't know where Florida State is.
But I think Florida State fell out. I believe.
Okay.
Yes, Florida State has fallen out. So they have 4. And with Clemson being the high, if you had Clemson being the highest ranked ACC team in the second week of January, congratulations.
Right.
That was not me.
Yeah, it wasn't me either, but I'm not as surprised to see them doing very well. The one thing was disappointing last night was we didn't get to watch Baylor versus West Virginia. Very sad to not see that game last night. I'm very upset. But there's going to be more games later on in the year that are going to be just as exciting to watch. The last thing I want to talk about, last headline before we get into our games to watch, is UConn. Watch out for them. I know they really haven't played anybody yet, but their only loss was to Creighton by 2, who is now 8th. They have to
Yep.
play Creighton again, and then they get Villanova twice. And a Big East that is really not as bad as they always seem to be. So watch out for UConn. Watch out for Creighton. Watch out for this Big East conference, because I think they're going to end up having more than one team in this. They're easily going to have more than one team in the tournament, and look for them to create some noise once it gets to tournament time, because I think multiple of these teams could be very good, and I'm excited to see where the Huskies go as they're playing some big games here soon.
Yeah, I agree.
But with
The Huskies are good.
Yep,
They're a legit team.
they really are. So with that being said, I think we get into our games to watch. Today we're recording it, so Wednesday we got a couple games for you. First game that I'm intrigued to see, and I think it's your only one, is Texas Tech and Texas. This is an outstanding matchup in the Big 12 tonight. Very excited to see the Raiders. They're my team. The Red Raiders are my team of the week, as they have two big games this week. They get Texas they get Texas today, and then we'll get on to their other game later this week. But I'm very excited to see where this game goes. It's another Big 12 matchup between two teams that are ranked very high, and it's another reason to show why Texas is one of the best teams if they win this. And if not, it's still not a big deal because you lost to a team that's top 15. So
Yep.
I'm very intrigued by this matchup. Anything else for that one?
Yeah, no, like you said, I think it's a great matchup. I love Big 12 basketball. I'm excited to see this game. Um, this week in college basketball, not the juiciest college basketball slate we've had. Nothing really super cool to watch on Thursday. On Friday, you do have Rutgers versus Wisconsin. We'll see if Rutgers can respond since they've fallen out of the rankings, and how Wisconsin responds to being blown out by Michigan. The game that I was really excited to watch on Friday that we no longer get to watch was Villanova at UConn. That game's been postponed due to COVID, I would assume. So that stinks. That's unfortunate. So that takes me to your next real game to watch on Saturday. The same Red Raiders that we just talked about, who play Texas tonight, they play Baylor, which is just an absolute that they're at home. It's probably Baylor's biggest test yet, with maybe the exception of Illinois. It should be a fun game. We'll see. Texas Tech, they can pull off the upset. Let's see. Let's see what they got. Let's see what Baylor's got. I think that should be an absolutely fantastic game. I also on Saturday have Virginia at Clemson. That's a big ACC showdown. Man, Clemson wins that. They're really in the driver's seat in the ACC. So look out for Clemson. If they get another victory on Saturday, that'll move them to 10-1, and they will be absolutely in the driver's seat in the ACC. Very, very interesting to watch from that. And my other game on Saturday, I actually have is Michigan. They go at Minnesota. Just another test. Hey, I'm saying the Wolverines are legit, but another test in the Big 12 against a top 25 opponent. They go at Minnesota. That should be an interesting game. And then my last game on Saturday is the Buckeyes of Ohio State. They travel to Illinois. Both those teams have just had up and downs since Big Ten play has started. So a pivotal game for both teams in their conference slate. So that's an interesting game to watch as well.
Yep, I think I had every one of those games on mine. I only have two more, I believe. Saturday night, I do have the Gonzaga St. Mary's game, just solely because the game against St. Mary's is always a good one, and it's at St. Mary's. So, with no fans being the COVID season and them being at home, granted, it doesn't matter, where you play it, but I would be intrigued to see this game. It could spell the end of Gonzaga's reign at 1, but it could also just be another dominant performance, and we don't even talk about this team ever again because they're always going to be number 1 and they're not going to change. So, I have this game down just because of the sole fact that it could mean a lot, but at the same time, it could just be another game and we don't have to worry about it. My only other game, we're not going to get this next episode out before Monday, so I want to talk about this game so everyone knows. Blockbuster Monday night game, Kansas versus Baylor. Very exciting game. Now, with last night's result, Kansas might not be top 10 anymore. I would be surprised to see them drop all the way out past 10th, but at the same time, they did lose to Oklahoma State, so we don't know what'll happen. But at the same time, they're still going to be ranked. So it's going to be number 2 Baylor, given that Baylor wins their games this week, versus whatever Kansas ends up getting ranked. as of right now, it's 2 versus 6. This is a great game. You don't know who to pick because Kansas could be it could be two different Kansases at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited to see this game. I'm really hoping for a great game on Monday night, and it's a close one. You don't know who to pick. It's just a great game of basketball Monday night. I'm really excited to see it. But yeah, other than that, I
Yeah,
think that's about it, Nathaniel.
yeah, I'm with you. Just real quick on the Baylor Kansas game, I can't
Mm,
wait for that. Nothing better than Big Monday in the Big 12. Um, it's just such a shame that we can't have fans. That's
yeah.
one of those games at Baylor. Kansas comes to town. You know that place would be absolutely rocking. Waco would be going
Mm.
nuts. That would be so fun. You're right. We don't know which Kansas we're gonna get, but Kansas is always Kansas. So always makes for an intriguing game.
Yep.
That one should be great to watch on Monday. But yeah, I think that about does it. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let
Mm-hmm.
us know your thoughts on this week's NFL games. Who you got winning? We'd love to know. Thanks for listening. We love any feedback, and
Yep.
we appreciate it a lot.